Hi, everyone, and thanks for checking out this review. So, today I've come to the eighth and final movie of my major horror franchise review that I've been doing for the month of June, and that's the Child's Play franchise. So, I'm up to the eighth and final movie to review, and that is the 2019 Child's Play remake. So, yeah, I watched this for the first time, as I have many of these movies. So, I'll go ahead and set it up with the premise, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review on this movie, which will contain spoilers. So, Child's Play is a 2019 horror film written by Tyler Burton Smith and directed by Lars Kleinberg. It serves as both a remake of the 1988 film as well as a reboot of the Child's Play franchise. It follows a family terrorized by a high tech doll who becomes self aware and subsequently murderous. The film stars Aubrey Plaza, Gabriel Bateman, Brian Tyree Henry, and Mark Hamill as the voice of Chucky. So basically, the multinational Caslin Corporation has just launched Buddy, a revolutionary line of high-tech dolls designed to be lifelong companions to their owners, learning from their surroundings and acting accordingly, quickly becoming a success for children worldwide. At a Caslin assembly factory in Vietnam, an employee is fired by a supervisor for unsatisfactory performance. In retaliation, the employee tampers with the Buddy doll that he is assembling by disabling all of its safety protocols before committing suicide. Since nobody notices this, the doll is packaged alongside others in preparation for international delivery. In Chicago, Illinois, retail clerk Karen Barclay and her 12-year-old hearing impaired son Andy have moved into a new apartment. In an attempt to cheer Andy up and make up for the unease caused by the relocation and her new boyfriend Shane, Karen blackmails her boss Wes in order to procure a Buddy doll, giving it to Andy as an early birthday gift. Wes selects the defective specimen. Once Andy activates the doll, he names himself Chucky and becomes attached to his owner. Over time, Chucky helps Andy befriend two other kids in the building, Fallon and Pug, I think it is, but also begins to display violent tendencies. For instance, he tries to strangle the Barclays' pet cat after he scratches Andy, and one night when he and his friends gleefully watch a horror film, Chucky starts mimicking the violence on the screen, approaching the trio with a kitchen knife before Andy disarms them. So that's basically the setup of this movie. Um, that kind of goes from there. You can probably kind of guess what happens, as you can with most of these movies. Um, so yeah, this Child's Play movie doesn't have anything to do with Don Mancini, of course. It's of the eight films, he's basically seven of them are his idea, his story, his directing, and in the case of the last few, this is a completely different and separate. I don't know if you want to say they call it a reboot. I would say reimagining slash um, what's the word I'm looking for? Remake. I don't know why that was so difficult. Remake, reimagining. I would call it more than a reboot because, for one thing, Don Mancini's Universal Child's Play series is still going on. He's got seven films in it and a new show called Chucky coming out. So it's hard to say it's a reboot, but it's just that it's a different view, a different reimagining of the Chucky doll, and you do well to keep that in mind while watching this movie. Like I said, the cast it stars Aubrey Plaza as Karen Barkley, Gabriel Bateman as Andy Barkley, Brian Tyree Henry as Detective Mike Norris, Mark Hamill is the voice of Chucky in this movie, and Tim Matheson plays Henry Caslin, who's the founder and CEO of the Caslin Corporation that makes the Buddy doll. So you could probably notice right from my premise and synopsis of this film that it follows some of the same structure of the original Child's Play film. It has a lot of differences from the original film as well and the original franchise. Obviously, Chucky in this case isn't based on Charles Lee Ray taking possession with a voodoo chant of the Chucky doll, the good guy doll, as it was in the original movie. This is basically a Chucky toy or a toy that goes bad because the safety protocols were messed up by a factory worker. and it really has nothing to do with Charles Lee Ray. It has nothing to do with the voodoo chant. Um, it's basically a toy that's gone evil. So I'll get into my pros and cons. I will say right off the bat that I see this as kind of another polarizing movie in the Child's Play. When people talk about the Child's Play movies, and unlike Cult of Chucky, I fall more into the I thought it was okay at best category with this movie. It has a lot of pros and cons to it. Ultimately, I don't think it's horrible, but I also don't think that it's one of the best Child's Play movies by any stretch. Um, so I'll start out with my pros. Um, I think there's really good acting in this movie, especially by Gabriel Bateman, who plays Andy Barclay. Obviously, Andy's a little older in this movie. In the original, he was 8 years old and didn't have as much on his plate to carry in the movie as 12-year-old Andy Barclay does in this movie. I thought Gabriel Bateman, who I don't know if he's a newcomer, and I haven't seen him in anything else, but he's really good. I mean, he does a good job in this movie. Aubrey Plaza's good as the mom. Um, and I think Mark Hamill does a good job as a voice acting Chucky. I mean, he's obviously Mark Hamill's most well known from the one of the most well known characters in cinema history, Luke Skywalker. But he's become a really good voice actor in his later years here, and he does a good job voicing Chucky. Um, I like the fact that they went in some different directions with the storyline in the original film. That it wasn't just a straight up rehash with a modern twist of everything was the same as the original. It definitely isn't. Like I said, um, the Chucky in this movie, obviously, he looks different than the original Chucky, but also how he comes to be Chucky is completely different than the original movie. It has nothing to do with a real life human murderer taking possession of the doll and transferring his soul into him. This is just a doll that has, like I said before, his safety requirements or safety protocol is turned off and messed with, and so he becomes murderous that way, basically. And so I give them credit for that they didn't just rehash it. The kills in this movie are really violent. They're really good, a couple of them anyway. There's a lot of blood and gore, probably more than any of the other movies in this series. It seems like as the movies go on, the blood and gore gets turned up more as these 8 films go on. I especially like the Shane kill, Shane is Karen's boyfriend in the movie. How he gets his legs broken, and that's pretty graphic. And then the whole thing with the tiller. That's all I'm going to say about that. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. That was a really violent and gory, bloody kill. There's another kill um, towards the end of the movie whenever all hell's breaking loose and a helicopter basically chops up somebody's throat in the mall that they're in at the end. There's pretty good humor, especially in the first couple acts of this movie. I would say that Brian Tyree Henry is Detective Mike Norris, unlike from the original film where Mike Norris is more of a serious police detective. He is here too in the third act, but in the first couple acts, he's kind of a comedic relief, if you will. He's living with his mother in the same apartment building that Andy and Karen do. So it definitely took a different twist with that. But I think the humor works fairly well in this movie. The movie kind of knows what it is. The animatronics work pretty well, despite some of the CGI that we get in these later movies. I think the one thing I think they do a better job, really the only thing I think they do a better job than the original film in this movie is, I think there's more of a build up with the relationship between Andy and Chucky in this movie. We got a little bit of that in the original movie from 1988, but Andy being only 8 years old in that movie, I suppose there was only so much they could do with it. Andy in this movie being older, almost a teenager, you see a progression of the relationship between Andy and Chucky, where they really start out as being friends. Because at the beginning, Andy doesn't really have any other friends, and obviously Chucky is. And then as Chucky starts to become murderous and more of a nuisance, that friendship kind of breaks up. But I just thought they did a better job with building that up. So that's pretty much it for the pros. As far as cons go, my biggest con is the look of Chucky in this movie. I really do not like the look of Chucky at all in this movie, from the colored eyes that go from blue to red, just to the way Chucky looks. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I don't like it. I think they could have probably stuck a little closer to the original. I know they were trying to do their own thing, and this is a different franchise in a way, a different reimagining. But I didn't like it. The friends of Andy ends up getting a couple of friends from the apartment building that they're living in. They're pretty forgettable. They're cliche. The acting's not great, particularly by one character in particular. Yeah, they just the typical friends cliche in the horror movie. They did nothing for me. They didn't need to be in this movie, honestly. If they would have kept them out, the movie still would have been the same. It wouldn't have lost anything. They really aren't needed. Karen's boyfriend's also the cliche asshole that we get with a lot of these single parent with a kid trying to find love in all the wrong places. Obviously, this is a guy that, spoiler alert, he's married and has two kids of his own as he's seeing Karen behind his wife's back. So, just another horror movie cliche. Chucky, I guess my biggest problem, besides the looks of Chucky in this movie, is this Chucky has no soul. He's not a character in this movie. He's basically like a robot or a toy gone bad. And Mark Hamill, as much as I like him, really doesn't bring anything from a soul standpoint or a character standpoint the way that Brad Dourif does to this character. Now, I'm not going to blame Mark Hamill for that because obviously the character was written in a certain way, and they you could tell when they made this movie they wanted to completely take aside the seven films that Don Mancini are in charge of and the Chucky that he wrote and directed as well. They wanted they wanted to completely take you out of that and say this is a completely different movie and reimagining of this character. And you get that when you watch the movie, but I think it's to its detriment. I think that part of what makes Chucky so great is one of the great horror icons is Brad Dourif and what he brings to the character. Um, and I think that's where, as silly as some of the voodoo stuff is in the original franchise, in the original movie, actually in the original movie, it's not as silly as it becomes in the later movies of the franchise. It's really to this movie's detriment that they don't use it that way because I just view this movie as it's just an evil toy that's gone bad. I mean, it's not the Chucky that I know and love. It doesn't really bring anything to the table. It's just a very hollow performance. Just doesn't have any soul to it. That's the best way to describe it. And this is more of a personal beef, but I just view this as a modern horror movie um, with using all the technologies, including cell phones, as being a big part of the movie. That just doesn't do it for me. I know I'm in the minority. I know I'm the old get off my lawn guy when I say that. But personally, as a horror movie, I don't like them when they use all the technology to try to push horror. They do that with a lot of. There's a lot of movie on Netflix and Shutter that try to do that with like social media and webcam series and webcam movies and all that. Get the f out of here with that stuff. That's how I feel about it. But again, I realize that's just a personal thing. I'm just not a fan of that. And I don't think this movie's not particularly scary or suspenseful like the first movie was from 1988. I mean, yeah, I can't think of one time that I was scared. They really did a piss poor job of building up any suspense before the kills in this movie compared to the first one. And I don't know. I went into it realizing that it's nothing like the original Don Mancini series, and that's really the way you have to watch it and enjoy it if you can. Is I think it was difficult for me because obviously I'm reviewing all the movies in this horror franchise, so having just watched Cult of Chucky and all the ones preceding that, leading up to this, it was hard for me to separate. It really was. I tried to, but you really do have to view it as a completely different movie than any of the Don Mancini Child's Play movies or any of the Brad Dourif Chucky movies. Because if you don't, and as you've noticed from my review, there's a lot of comparison going on, which I didn't want to do, but I couldn't help it. I think this movie might benefit for me by taking 6 months off from the Child's Play movies and watching it again, which I'll probably do. But I'm not a huge fan of the Chucky in this movie. I'm sorry. For those of you that liked it and really, really enjoyed the reimagining of it, I'm glad you got more out of it than I did. And I do think the fact that I watched all the other movies right up until this one probably was to its detriment in my review. But I'm going to go ahead and give this movie a 7 out of 10 in my review. Again, it's not terrible. There's a lot of good about this movie. The acting, especially by the kid that plays Andy Barclay, is really good. The kills are really gory and bloody. So if that's your jam, then you're going to get that out of this movie. But I just don't like Chucky. I don't think this is Chucky. I think this is a toy gone bad. They could have named it Herman. And I think it probably would have done a better job of separating itself from the original series that I've come to like so much. So 7 out of 10 for me. Go ahead and like this video and comment down below your thoughts about the 2019 Child's Play remake. Tell me if you enjoy it more than I do, or if you're on kind of on board with what I'm saying. Either way, please subscribe to my channel to see future review movies, as well as my upcoming my final video on Child's Play, which will be me ranking all 8 movies. Should be coming up here before June 30th in a couple of days. Um, so yeah, go ahead and subscribe to look for that, as well as my announcement on what my next horror franchise review and ranking will be coming up next month. So thanks for watching this video. Have a great day. Bye.